Hey, this is Jim Baldonado from the Home Agency, and I'm with a good friend of mine and customer of ours, Jimmy Aden from Crop Tech Solutions in Gothenburg. And Jimmy, would you? I remember when you kind of started this years and years ago. Would you kind of give us a little background and when it started and what you were thinking of back then?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Jim, for having me in today. I appreciate it. We started Crop Tech back around 2012, basically out of a necessity that I had seen kind of coming for a number of years on my own operation. Started with technology and data and information back in the late 90s. At that time, it was all pretty straightforward and simple. As we got closer to the when I started Crop Tech, started spending most of my winters free time kind of going over data and information and just trying to figure out how to implement all this new information that I was gathering on every pass and how to get the best basically return from it. Kind of my goal was to find something to generate, ROIs. That's kind of how I look at everything. What's the best return on investment? Jump forward to 12. I finally started up Crop Tech, hired a few guys that are agronomist, farm background, and had an interest in technology and kind of the data revolution that we were seeing in agriculture. It's been almost 10 years now. In that 10 years, it's staggering the amount of changes that we've seen even since then. But the one thing that I still feel is missing is we just don't have an abundance of people out there that can do the deep dive analytics, really looking at the numbers and figuring out, okay, what layer are we working with today? What should we focus on, and where's the ROI in each one of these layers?
So when somebody that's listening to us has interest, do they have to have anything specific on their farm? Do they have to have special equipment? Can anybody
Yeah, I
take part in this?
yeah, it's what we've tried to do at Crop Tech. I mean, being a farmer myself, that's first and foremost what I am. I'm fifth generation. Um, it was frustrating to have all these people walk through the door and have new apps or new technology or new products that were going to create or generate all this extra return for you. And being ag producers and farmers, we're generally optimistic people, so you want to believe that, and so you throw money at it, or you try these new products, and some get your money back, some do a little bit better, and some you can't even measure the return. So we don't really have to have different equipment than what most guys have today. Guys started buying technology and equipment in their tractors, 10 years ago or sooner. It was that they weren't utilizing them. They didn't know how, or didn't take the time, or didn't really even want to know how to write the prescriptions and to place, fertility where it needed to be. We have kind of taken a different approach that we work with one layer at a time. Our first layer 10 years ago was the financial side of it, and then the soil, because everything in ag is based on the soil. So we did our first analytics for 2, 3, 4 years of grid sampling, or sampling every 2 acres on everybody's operation. And so now we've got this trend 10 years later that we can see what is happening out there. And then when we make a change, or we do something wrong, or we don't follow the plan, we can quickly go back to, okay, well, this is what happened. Whether it was intentional or not, we can go back to that and say, well, because of this, you cost yourself $35 an acre. Maybe you planted too high. Maybe you didn't put enough fertility in certain areas. Maybe you just shut it off because you couldn't get the prescription loaded. we can then go back and measure that year after year after year and start really, throwing numbers in front of guys that are real, and you have the information to back that up. So, but no, I mean, to answer your original question, most guys have the technology. It's just sometimes we say we spend a lot of time, educating ourselves and our customers because it's constantly evolving and changing. So it's just learning how to use it and use it at the right time and the right way.
Well, and I've watched your business grow and your farming operation, and I know it adds a lot of value. There's just no doubt about it to the operation, and it's more than just the soil. It's more than just other things. I mean, there's a number of different things, but there's probably different. You talk about layers. If somebody wants to just come in and do part of it to get started, I know they can.
Right.
How do you split that up?
Yeah, so I mean, if somebody comes to us and maybe they just have their yield maps, we have a deep enough database now, and we are adding all this collective data into a database, into each column based on what it's representing. We can get a pretty good feel just by saying, okay, here's your field, and we'll just take one field at a time instead of focusing on a whole farm. But here's your field. Here's the soil types on this field. Now we'll compare those to our database and what varieties and what populations and what fertility worked in those soil types. And then we can build a plan just off of that. It's always better if we have, 3, 4, 5 years of that, so we can see the trend, throwing out the highs and the lows, and just using good information. But yeah, we can do just the fertility piece. We can do just the planting prescriptions, and those are all pretty common words, and everybody says, "Oh yeah, I use those. I do those." What we try and get across is that, yeah, we're all using them. I've been using them since '97, but I didn't use them correctly until probably 2012, 13, 14, when I had this plethora of information to start looking at. That's when I could really start making decisions.
The value of all this data is you really can't measure that. I mean, it's nice that it's out there. People pay you a fee for this, but it's not just the data that's going to be on their farm. There's collective data that's all around them that they kind of have a jump start as to, I've heard you talk before where people think they have to plant just a ton of seeds or a high population, where it's just sometimes a waste of money because if the fertility isn't there or if the soil's not right. And we've also talked about, less population, stronger stocks. We always have an issue with wind. Right. If we can produce the same amount of grain with 28,000 as we can with 34, right, look at the savings and look at the stock being, a lot better.
We kind of like to, we focus on, and this might sound counterintuitive, but we focus on the bottom third of a field. So, we'll have layers, or we'll have our scripts will have 13, 14, 15 different layers as far as populations and fertilities and watering and everything that we're working with. But if we can bring that bottom third, either up to its maximum level, which might only be 170 bushel yield in that bottom third of the field. But if we're doing that and using less inputs and maximizing what we generally see is we can get by on a 25,000 plant population in that bottom third, even if it's irrigated. Dry land's a little different animal, but it still kind of follows the same trend. We can cut our inputs drastically in those areas because we're not going to change what that ground is, without going out and, doing tons and tons of manure and stuff like that, which we will do and we will help you do if that's what you want to do. But there's still a point that piece of dirt is still, its makeup is its makeup, and it's gonna produce what it's gonna produce. Now, on the other end of things, what we also see is up on the very top third or the top end, maybe it's a 280 to 300 bushel yield zone. We don't know what that's capable of yet until we have done this for 3 or 4 years and done the same program and stayed consistent. And our samples are in the consistently in the same places, pulled the same time, we try and maintain consistency in every step that we do, because that helps with being able to measure good data at the end of the year. So that top end could be 350, and we'll gradually get there. We're not going to go out and say, okay, let's dump 400 pounds in on there because it's the top end. Right. We don't know what that is yet. We'll gradually go up 5-10% a year until it starts topping out. Right. And then what you'll see is those areas their fertility will start coming up and keep coming up. Well, that's fine to a point, but then all of a sudden you're over applying even in that area. So,
well, I think a lot of it is, and I'm not a producer, but I know I get set in my ways, and so it's something that a producer's this is gonna be a whole different way of thinking.
It absolutely is.
It's not something that they've done forever, and they're going to continue to do it. If they want to make a change, they're going to have to think of a little bit different.
Right. Yeah, I think we've had a 92% retention rate since we started, and that says something. Mm-hmm. But what's been really cool is our customers. It's not even a thought anymore. It's like we're gonna spend this small amount for our fee to go down this path, and we're going to do it every year. And and I'm not ashamed to say, ours is $10. It has been since the beginning. $10 an acre is our fee. We will do front end to back end planning, data analysis, hybrid placement, anything. We'll do CSP for guys. So we're just really helping everybody every step of the way. But the guys are just like, yeah, it's not even a thought anymore. We like what you're doing. We see the value in it. I look at things, myself and the rest of the company look at things. We stress, as I said earlier, ROI. My goal has always been, if we can get a 3 to 4 times return, that's what we shoot for. So if we're going to ask the farmer to spend $1, we need to show him how that dollar is going to make $3 to $4 back. We don't necessarily disapprove or approve products, but if somebody wants to try something, or a company comes to us and wants us to try something, we will try it and we will put it out there, and we will do test independently. We don't sell a product. We've been approached to push and sell products, but we won't, because that way nobody can look at Crop Tech and say, well, they're pushing this product because they're selling it. Right. We're not going to do that. We will give them an honest answer at the end of the year. Yeah, we see some potential in it. It's going to need another year or two before we can really put the numbers to it and show that kind of a return. Or no, it's currently not working in the way maybe this farmer is farming. If he wants to make a few changes, then we go test that.
Well, there's just so much information out there, and I guess that would be worth the $10. Just if I was a producer and I was just out here on my own trying to keep up with everything that's out there and not be able to do that, pay somebody $10 to keep up on all that stuff and help me with my prescriptions or my planting records or my harvested records. I would think
analytics.
Exactly. I think that would be worth $10 right there.
Yeah, it is. And our average since we've started, we went back and figured this last year, what we've saved our producers year over year since inception, was $78 an acre. So that $10 fee. Now you also have your sampling and stuff that you're going to do, which is going to cost you another, $8 to $10. We're trying to find ways to drive that down, but we want that yearly information. We want to see those trends because it is kind of shocking how things change. You'd think everything would be kind of ebbing and flowing in the same way, but there's years phos will drop out of bed, and then the next year it doesn't move. Maybe the next year you've got this deficiency in zinc that came out of nowhere. We're starting to see a lot more potassium needed in our area. Generally, potassium isn't something in at least central Nebraska, maybe all of Nebraska, is needed because there's just been an abundance of it in the soil. So guys don't even think about really applying it. Now all of a sudden we're growing 250, 60 bushel corn. It's taking more out than it can regenerate. So those are the trends that we're starting to see, that suddenly somebody's like, well, geez, why can't I get past this number anymore? Well, here's your trend in potassium. So you need to be looking at that.
Well, and I think that goes back to the producer needing to change his way of thinking, because if he's always done what he's always done, he's always going to get what he's always got. So
that's right.
And so that's where you guys come in. I know there's other groups, not really similar to yours, but there's other people out there. Sure. What sets you apart?
Well, I think I touched on it just a minute ago. Our focus is 100% return on investment, and I think the other big thing is being independent. A lot of this gets done within suppliers, people that are selling you products, and I'm definitely not. That's great, and that's where it kind of all started. But there's always this thought like, okay, do I need that much? Or are they just selling me a product? They can know when they come to us, we have no reason to change the numbers. Right. I think on one of my, I said earlier on something that was on Facebook or whatever, one of my analogies, I guess, is you go to the doctor's office and you do all your tests, and they check your blood, and they check all your numbers. Well, when you get them back, you can look at them, and if they're all good and they're, top tier, then you're doing something right. But if some things are off, you need to pay attention to those. You need to look at them and say, okay, not just ignore it, because it's going to cause problems down the road. So, I think just what sets us apart is that we're an independent supplier. We deep dive into the numbers probably more than anybody does. Consistency is a huge thing, not only with our processes, but employees. The guys that started the company with me are still there. They love what they're doing. One of the issues we have in technology is that, like, somebody will come into to another organization, whether it's a co-op or whatever. They're there, they do a good job, you get a relationship with them as a farmer, and 2 or 3 years later, if that long, they've moved up or they've moved on. Mm-hmm. Now all of a sudden you're back to developing a relationship again with this person. We are very relationship driven. Our guys, our customers work with the same rep they've worked with generally from the start. So we know that one of our representatives can handle, 10, 15, 20,000 acres, however efficient and however much he can handle, that's what he takes care of. And his customers are his customers, and they're in it for the long haul.
Sure. I know the answer to this in part of it, but how does crop tech mesh with other areas of the farmer's operation?
Well, I think once again, just the amount of information that we're getting back and seeing, we can really start working with insurance agents, saying, okay, by lowering population, as you stated earlier, we've got a healthier plant, or maybe we're using some technology, drones or satellite images that we're watching on a day-to-day basis or weekly for sure, that, okay, when an event comes through or when something happens, we can kind of pinpoint, okay, here's what happened. A lot of times I'll have something happen in my field, a storm blows through the area and I think nothing of it because it didn't do anything right around me. But 3-4 weeks later, you go out and you're working on a pivot and you walk into an area and you're like, my gosh, why is the corn all broke off? Or I didn't even know it got hailed up here. We're kind of a virtual agronomist. We do go out in the fields periodically throughout the summer, but we're always watching from the sky or from however we can, to kind of keep the guys, like, hey, this happened over here to some of our other customers. It's in your area. Maybe we need to look at it.
Well, and I think where I was going with part of that is that, and it would be for every insurance agent across the state or wherever you're at, with your prescriptions, your planted acres. We always talk about planted acres, how important those acres are. You don't have to match FSA. You want to pay your premium on your planted acres. And
right.
So, your maps, when you guys are done, whether it's planted acres or harvested production, we have that, or you're able to give that to their insurance agent, and that really helps on the insurance side, and also helps you in the long run.
All right. Yeah, even like the reporting we did, I guess, the last year or two, kind of testing the waters there. That's going to be a huge help when, we can just hand over those files and you guys can suck it in your system.
Sure. And when you, if just because FSA says you got 142 acres in this field, but you only plant 137,
yeah,
there's no need to pay that extra premium for not only multi-peril and hail, when you don't need to. Pay it on the 137, and then same way on the other end, when you harvest, no need to divide by 142 to make your production go down. Divide by the 137. And so we've really noticed with a lot of your customers in that we also have, we just love getting the acres accurate. We like getting the production, and it just makes the whole process work so much better.
Another entity we work with is on the water side, whether it's pivot salesman or whatever. We can start seeing, well, everything's in place up front going into the year. What's happening? Why are we not producing what we should be producing? Well, we've found cases that, okay, the nozzle package on the pivot is 20 years old, and yeah, it's spraying out water, but the hole sizes are different. Maybe the regulators are shot. There's little springs in there that over time just either become, do not work or do not work efficiently. So yeah, I mean, it's been amazing just to be able to really start pinpointing things by looking at data and information. And our farmers, and myself included, and that's kind of why we started this, is we just can't process this amount of information as human beings anymore. We have to have help. And I don't like doing it any more than anybody else.
Right.
I want to go out and farm. I'm a farmer, and that's what I enjoy doing. And when I get in that tractor, I like things to work, and I like my scripts and all the technology to work seamlessly. So that's what we also assist in, is just making sure that when you go out to farm, it's there, or even your dry spreader, your co-op is out spreading for you. We provide them the maps. All they got to do is load them and go.
So, and I suppose all of this is incorporated into like digital farming. Is that what that's called? I mean, I see digital farming pop up every once.
Yeah, that's really what it is. I mean, it's just the tools and technology that we have currently and that are coming. I wish I could see 10 years down the road at this point, because it's going to be exciting. And I feel that robotics, just a lot of automation, a lot more automation is coming. I guess we've kind of seen that example of the driverless tractors and stuff now, and that's all coming really quick. And So I guess what we do, or what we've started down this path doing, it will evolve and it will change, which is what we're good at. But it's going to be needed more than ever.
Well, something that people probably don't think of when they think of crop tech, but how does crop tech programs assist on down the road food chain?
Yeah, so we we have a bunch of thinkers in our organization, and sometimes we spend too much time thinking and planning and seeing the future. But it's the sustainable side of it. Just the one of the things we're working on currently is you hear a lot of talk about carbon. Um, right now, it's a wild west as far as trying to figure out how do you measure carbon? What are the correct procedures? Who's doing it correctly? What do the end users of that, the FedExes and the big companies that need to buy the carbon for the offsets? Farmers have a pretty big opportunity here to start measuring, collecting, and maybe just hanging on to it, for now, because currently I think a ton of carbon's worth $15 somewhere in there on the open market. We generally think that's going to continue to go up. But we can help you start doing that right now. The numbers we collect and the numbers we have in our database already, or that we're getting no matter what, are exactly the numbers that they're going to need to prove that you're carbon farming, that you're doing things correctly. Data is the second harvest now for ag, and the data from our customers, of course, nobody gets to see. It goes into a database. We're not a big company. We're not selling anything. We're not selling data. We're using it collectively as we grow and spread out across the state. We're able to, as you stated earlier, kind of help the new grower or the new customer come on and use that information to assist in him, doing things the right way. Some guys might get a little bit, like, well, why would I want to help my competitor or the guy across the road? We kind of look at things differently. I'm a very community-minded guy. I love the small town I grew up in, as do most of us. It means a lot to us. So we're looking at it as more of okay, if you help the individuals in the community in the surrounding area, you're helping the community. You're putting money back into it. You're helping the school systems. You're keeping people profitable and able to continue, in ag, what they love doing. So,
well, and being out to the shop and listening to you guys are always working on new creative ways to help the producer. Is there anything else out there that you're working on?
We actually have a little unit running across the field here in the last couple of days. As I kind of mentioned earlier, my goal is, and this is a ways out yet, but instead of like most companies, we go out and we start at $10. Now we need to go 11 or 12 or whatever. I'm looking at it a different way. I want to go out and say, okay, how can we find ways to help pay for the soil samples? How can we help find ways to pay for our service? So, in a perfect world, it's a net zero. It doesn't cost them anything because now we're building carbon credits. So that's going into your bank account, whether it's a carbon bank account or an actual one. But yeah, it's going to cost some money to use our service, but we want to offset that somehow. So one of the units we're using right now, it's actually a gamma ray thing. You go out and you drive it across the fields instead of going out and having to grid sample every acre every year. We can go out and use this as a baseline. It will measure all of the different elements out there, CECs, organic matter, all of your nutrients. Then we only need like 10 or 12 acre samples, so maybe 16 of those across the field instead of 64. So we're lowering that cost down. Going to take a little something to run that across. That all has to get figured out yet. But we're just trying to find ways to use technology so we can continue to lower the cost. There's also some products, products that people will say, okay, it'll add carbon to your soil. We will try those, and once again, as I stated, we'll give them a shot. But we've got to see changes, and we've got to be able to measure the ROI on them.
Well, these are all goals of these new tools, and I'm assuming these. I mean, everybody is trying to find their niche, and I think from what I've seen over there for the last 10 years, I mean, you guys have really found that niche, and it's just providing a great service to the producers over there. I mean, everybody I talk to, like you said, it's like maybe insurance. It's just something you do.
Right. And that's and that's good to hear. And it's always we've created a very broad, intelligent base of customers that have gone from trying to figure some things out, or how are we going to implement all this data, to be able to, okay, they don't have to think about it. Now they can think about new ways to be more efficient, or to do things differently. Different crops, different, we're working with some, can't really say who, but we're working with some very large corporations that, they want a sustainable product and they want it on their shelves, but they have to be able to measure that, from front end to back end. Well, the beauty of it is we have it all. Now all we got to do is put it in a blockchain. Every operation goes across that collects all this information. It goes onto a piece of a blockchain. At the end of the year, that blockchain can be handed over to the next step in the food chain, and they can add to it. Well, and that goes all the way down to the consumer. When the consumer in California picks up a bag of something and scans a code, there could be a story and a verifiable, immutable, nothing can get changed once it's in a blockchain, all the way back to the producer. And there's a story there. And that story makes people feel good and connects them back to the farm. So,
well, and I know your location mainly is south of Gothenburg at the shop, but I know you're out and about. I mean, you're not just right around Gothenburg.
Right. We're out in western Nebraska, out towards the kind of edging out towards Grant. East, we're down to around here to Seward. And Central City, north, our valley gets pretty thin back around the Gothenburg area, but definitely have some potentials, in the O'Neill and northern Nebraska area also. So
I was talking to one of my customers down in the Seward, I guess closer to Friend area, and they were just asking, will you take CropTech's numbers? Well, sure, I'll take CropTech's numbers. I didn't even know they were doing business with you.
Yeah, well, that's cool.
So that was interesting to see. But you were talking about drones, you were talking about robotics, you were talking about a number of different things. Other tools or trends that you see out there on the horizon that we can't see 10 years down the road?
I think, and I'll have some on my farm this year too. As I said, we work in layers, and we like to perfect one layer at a time, because if you don't know everything about the soil, for example, it's hard to stack then the fertility and the seeding rates and the varieties. Those are all their own layer, so they all have to mesh and stack on top of each other. Water, of course, in our area and other areas, water's a pretty big deal. Irrigation, I'm a 95% irrigated on my farm, as are most people. Trying to figure out the water piece, how does that work, especially with center pivot irrigation? There are some tools out there that I'm going to have on 5 units this year that have some sensors out front that are measuring infiltration rate just by, it's just a sensor. It's not physically checking the soil or anything, but then it's as it goes around, it's changing the prescription for the next pass based on what it's seen on that pass. So, that's where we're going. We're kind of slow moving. We're not a tech startup that you build, you take in a bunch of money and you sell it.
Right.
We've been doing this 10 years, and I think it's just a slow crawl, but we're doing things correctly, and we're doing things in the way that farmers farm.
Sure.
And instead of just pushing things down their throat, like, oh, here's a new app, here's a new product. So to us, in our little neck of the woods, the water piece is kind of our next step. And then we'll just continue to add on to it. As I said, the automation, it's mind-boggling sometimes. Sure. What's coming and how we're going to implement it all and pay for it all. Sure. That's a key. A lot of things can come at us, and there can be a lot of cool stuff, but I've still got to write the check, and I've still got to get that check back. Sure. And have a return on it. So
well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you said earlier the history there was like a $72 or $78 return.
Yep.
Well, I would think that anybody, for a $10 investment, if over time got a return of $78, that would be an easy sell for the next year. And I'm assuming, we're in irrigated crop ground, but that doesn't mean this doesn't work for dryland farmers as well.
Oh, no. In fact, it works. That's one thing that we kind of questioned as we actually had an office. We had an office in Illinois for a short time, but I guess what we found was it's all pretty similar. And a lot of the same varieties that I'm growing are working out there. I guess I was kind of staggered when I was driving through Illinois one time and how many of the seed signs were the same as the ones we were using around our area. Yeah, there were some differences, and there's going to be, but it's definitely adaptable, not only across the acres in Nebraska, but across the different crops. We've looked at, well, how can we apply this to cotton or beans or edible beans or anything like that? It all works the same. You're growing something in soil that needs nutrients to grow, sure. And that's the starting point. And then from there, you build on that. So,
well, I think with fertilizer costs, what they are, and how to manage that. Like I said earlier, if you just always done it this same way, you may be just wasting a lot of money, because if you don't need to place some of that stuff out there,
yep.
Why do it, especially at today's costs? And same way with seed and everything else. If you can cut your population by 10, 15%, that's a huge savings and still end up with the same yield at the end.
Right.
And so I just see a lot of benefits from what you guys are doing, and I know Gothenburg and the people around there are very happy that you are doing that.
Well, appreciate it. Yeah, and we're happy we're doing it too, and we enjoy it, and it's our passion.
Sure.
It's not a side job. It's not something. It was something when I started farming, got right into. I came back. I wasn't going to be a farmer, and then changed my mind one day as I was flying over Kansas and landed, and my farming career started. But it's just something I've always had a passion about, and I just the value of information has always been so clear to me. Our farms are getting larger, and we're dealing with millions and millions of dollars, which you just think, what other business out there that's dealing with millions and millions of dollars isn't using data and information to make their business more efficient,
sure,
and to make decisions. So we as ag producers, we have to do the same thing, and it also serves to tell our story that we are doing things correctly. I think one of the most shocking things is when I have a friend that grew up in the city, or an acquaintance or somebody in business that comes out and we show them what they're doing, and they can't even hardly get their mouth shut because they're just in awe. Their jaw opens up and they're just like, we had no idea, that it's this techie.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that you guys are doing things. Why would I go out and put out 250 pounds in when I only need 170?
Sure.
And that's one of the big things is, we're growing a lot of 250 to 280 corn, pushing 300 on 0.7 pounds in. University recommendations are generally 1.2. So, we've already cut, and 1.2, while it's at the high end, it's still not, you're still not polluting the environment. Now we're back to 0.7, which is almost half of what is, what we thought was needed, and growing 50 to 60, 70 bushel more corn. So, but it's a combination of stacking it in the right places,
Sure.
putting the right amount on in the right places. There will be areas that it's at 240 pounds in,
Right.
but there's also areas it's at 100.
Sure.
And then our populations are all adjusted based on that. So,
Well, anything else that I missed? I had some questions written down that I wanted to visit about.
no, I once again, just thanks for taking the time to.
Well, I guess one other thing, and I always like to talk about my family. Tell us about your family. I know we got something in common. We got a lot of girls.
Yeah. My wife, I actually went to college in Kearney. It was Kearney State at the time. Never really thought I would end up farming, so I went down the pilot path, and I was part of the first airway science bunch that went through Kearney State College. Was thinking air traffic control or flying or whatever. I had started flying when I was 16, so I just kind of went down that path. Graduated, moved down to Denver, flight instructor out there. My soon-to-be wife was also out in Denver. She had just moved out there, and like 3 months later, she had taken a teaching job, and 3 months later, I get a job back in Lexington. So I had to leave her out there, which she wasn't real happy with. But anyway, I came back and worked there in Lexington as a charter pilot, flight instructor for about a year. But that whole time, when I was flying and waiting in airports and seeing my future of spending time in hotels and walking through airports carrying my luggage and being away from home, all I could, as I was flying, I was always watching what was going on. I was always watching the farmers and thinking of all the ways we could do things differently. Mm-hmm. And one day over Kansas, I had a 2-day stay over somewhere down south there, and I was flying back, and that's when it hit me.
Yep.
So I came back, got married shortly after that. I have 4 daughters. 3 of them are in college currently, so one's still back in high school. But it's been a great ride. Mom and Dad are still back there. Dad's still out on the farm every day, messing around, doing something. He just turned 92.
Really?
Mom's about 90, so she's probably got more energy than I do. But yeah, it was a wonderful place to grow up. I've been fortunate to have, like I said, be 5th generation, have all that history. We're right on the edge of town. It's handy. And just, my parents have given me the ability and the go ahead to do what I wanted to do. They just said, if you think that's what we need to do from an operation standpoint, do it.
Yeah.
And it's been fun, and it's been fun for them, and had a lot of fun.
Thank you for giving me your time as well. Like I said, you've been a good customer, been a good friend. We moved over into the Gothenburg area in about 91, and we've always enjoyed doing business with you, and
Yep.
look forward to many more years.
Yep, we do too.
All righty. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah.